let's talk about album though, because you mentioned that and we were literally having a conversation about an album that was released, and we're looking at the numbers. And I mean, from your aspect as a president, Jamaican music, they don't really sell great. Like, let's be honest. Like, they don't. Like, they must sell like 300, one sell 3. Like, it's very paltry. And do you, as a president, do you care about record sales for Jamaican artists? Because I don't think the space.
I think it's interesting because I definitely think there's a lot of, kind of headlines around when a Jamaican artist drops an album and it's like, numbers are in for the first week and they sold this many things. And it's like, it's not necessarily the best indicator of popularity. And I think there's too much in our world in general, the way social media and headlines and things work, that like things that are going to create, like a negative attention or more engagement is going to just get out there more and people are going to engage with them more. So I think that has led to an extra focus on that kind of thing that's not as important, because the reality is like people need to understand that like the way that we consume is changing all the time. Like, there's no reason for me to go buy an album on iTunes. And I'm not going to go out there and be like, hey, you know what? You're a fan of this artist. You want to support them? Go buy it on iTunes. No. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So, I think it's just a matter of understanding that streaming equivalencies and how that works, and a certain number of streams, converts to the album sale, and thinking about things in that way. And also, you could have a situation where you released 15 singles before the album and you released your huge album, and then all of those streams and those singles for that first week, those equivalencies are counting towards those album sales too. Yeah. And then there's all sorts of other stuff in terms of the way that, maybe you're on the road during that time and you're selling actual physical albums at shows, and maybe you sell more physical albums at shows than you do if not. So there's a lot of ways for these numbers to not necessarily be the most the indicative of what's going on. And I think people need to have a better understanding of that and be like, it's just not the end all be all, because again, like, no, we're not moving back to a time where people are going to start buying albums anymore. It's just like, it's just an antiquated way of thinking.
Yeah. Because I realize
want to know is like, why is that with the album sales? At least people would want to know, why is it that, we have the likes of Popcorn, you have the likes of Coffee, Shensia, all of which have released, big albums within the last year or so. Why is it that they release their albums and you see the numbers that they do? And then you look at Stick Figure now, and you see that they do like over 10,000 or 13,000 first week. Like, what are they doing differently? How can we reach up to those figures? Artists. I think
it's kind of the method that Stick has grown over time. It's this idea that people are waiting for each album. Like, it's about having that full length thing and it being a part of people's lives in that way, and it not being hit reliant, not being like, well, here's what everyone's talking about right now, I want to be a part of it. It's like, this is, you like that, about it before everybody else. And because of that, you want to support it. Like, there's this kind of idea of this fan karma meter where if you're an artist and you're giving people value all the time, you're creating content for people, you're putting it out there every single day, you're, just giving stuff for free, and they feel like, in my life every day, things aren't great all the time, this and that. I go on my social media and here's some stuff that's providing value. Then when you go and you ask for that favor to buy a ticket, to stream the album, to buy the album, people are way more likely to do it. So I think it's just an understanding of a brand at such a really high level. And also the fact that we have to understand how different streams count. So like YouTube plays do not work in the same way in terms of streaming equivalencies as Spotify stream. So naturally, if you're an artist who does a lot on YouTube, your first week sales numbers aren't going to translate as well. So I think it's just, you have to think about where the music is consumed from and how, and I think the best way to build on that and to have higher streaming equivalencies is to really focus on building the core. Like, ultimately, that Stick Figure story is about the core. Like, there are
core audience.
People who would say, this is my number one favorite artist, and I'm going to listen to every album that comes out for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, and it's going to keep, the production quality is going to keep getting better. And this is my number one thing. That's the thing, really. And I think there's certain artists that have done that really well and who have kind of built cores in that way. Obviously, I actually think that, an interesting example is when you think of like, when Dexa Daps was putting out his album and Call Me If was kind of doing his thing and that. And Dexa, to me, was a good example of an artist who when you look at the artists that are popular on the YouTube charts in Jamaica versus a dancehall artist that might be popular in the US or in the UK or here and that, Dexta to me is a good example of somebody who's able to kind of do a bit of both. And that album streamed really well.
Yeah.
You know, because you do need to have the support of your core audience, but you also need to live with, you know, beyond that.
Yeah. And I realize that the live music aspect that, or the venues that you guys have ownership in is also instrumental for the artists, because people don't buy, as you say, and I realize that people don't buy physical albums anymore, but they do go to a concert, they do go to the shows. And I think that does that in any way. Does it correlate in any way with their overall? I mean, it doesn't correlate with the album sales, no? But it's just another good stream of income to have, and that's where you say where their audience, as you said, the core audience, come to support.
Yeah, I think us being on the live side, we really understand how the live world works and how to build somebody and how to build your hard ticket history and get you to a point where, you know, you have this demand in as many markets as possible. Because these artists are playing, you know, majority venues that aren't necessarily ours because it's a huge country and whatever. But I do think it's...
like how many people can your most, like your largest venue?
Like 900.
Okay.
So just mid-level, smaller rooms. But I think understanding the live aspect of things, like Kali Buzz was our first ever client before my time, and my partners, Igor and Thomas, they started managing him. They went to college together. Kali came out, did a show at their local venue, the Catalyst in Santa Cruz, California. And, you know, that kind of started the relationship there. They built Kali as a hard ticket artist with a core, right? He has a lot of markets within the US and different places, and then built himself independently where he has a great merch game, he has great live numbers, and he has great streaming numbers, and he's making money directly from his streams. But it's been built from a long, long time ago to be a hard ticket artist. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages when we talk about these different markets around the world, that artists that are from the country that they're trying to build and have, right? If you go to France and you want to go to a reggae show, the artist who's going to sell the most tickets in France is an artist from France. They have an advantage. They're in France and they're building in France. If you go to California, an artist in California is building in California. It's a real disadvantage and a serious problem that we have, where if you're in Jamaica, you have the entire world to build in. So where do you go focus in? And that was actually on purpose. This is sponsored by...
Right.
You know, there's like this idea that, you know, you have so many different places that you can focus on. And then if you want to go tour in the US, you have to pay 30% to the US government, and you got to fly in your band. And there's serious disadvantages and things that need to be done to make that process easier. But that's really one of the barriers to entry of artists in whatever country they're in have an advantage in that country.
Would Ineffable Records help in that way? If
in terms of
sign with you, would you be able to help in moving the band? And
I mean, I think anything we're doing, we want to figure out how to build it in the US and in everywhere. So yeah, I think it's just about identifying, you know, where something makes sense and then like kind of pushing it forward.
Taking a break out of this podcast to big up our sponsors, Itopia Life Herbals, where cannabis and culture combined for a one-of-a-kind experience. You can visit them at 10 West Kings House Road, just across from the Canadian Embassy. Also, you can follow them on Instagram at Itopia Life, or visit their webpage at itopialife.com for the latest info on strains and merch. Right now, I want to take the time to big up our new sponsor, Self Care Friday. Yes, the skin is the largest organ of the body, and whatever is applied is absorbed by the body, thus into the bloodstream. Did you know this, Ari? Okay. Therefore, it is important that we're mindful of what we use on our body, and this is where Self-Care Friday comes in. They take away the hassle of you having to worry about what goes on your skin, as their products are safe and sustainable. They're handmade with natural source ingredients from the earth. You see me? Their nourishing products range from organic, natural, and vegan, as they are cruelty-free. Love your skin, and your skin will love you back.
True.
Give your skin sanctum and choose Self-Care Friday. And let's make every day Friday.
Yay.
Or you can use the code FIX15 and get 15% off all purchases. That's the FIX15 and get 15% off all purchases. Follow them on Instagram and TikTok at Self Care Friday, and visit their website at www.selfcarefriday.com. It seems like with all that you just said, you've been able to create like your own reggae ecosystem, if you're a reggae oriented ecosystem, if you will.
Yeah, and honestly, the way I think about it is like there's a physical and a digital ecosystem in every single scene that there is, right? Like you pull up, specifically if you're in Jamaica and you go on YouTube and you're a fan of like the Valiant and like this kind of sound, right? Like you pull up one video and it's going to start recommending you all sorts of other videos that are similar. You're part of that digital ecosystem. If you're on Spotify in the US and you're listening to Stick Figure, and Stick Figure is growing at the top of that scene, then people who are making similar music, the algorithm can start recommending it to stuff. And so it creates a whole other ecosystem below it. It's the same thing that's happening with YouTube here with artists. And that's where artists need to continue to expand and understand how each platform works, because as those scenes grow and as there are kind of artists that are growing in those different places, it creates an entire ecosystem beneath it. And I think when you think about artists like Sean Paul and Shaggy and kind of like that level, it's like they have markets literally everywhere in the world they can tap into and kind of grow in those places. And even those artists specifically having those markets worldwide does allow people who make similar music to have something that's going to get recommended to it, right? And I think this is where algorithms are really important, because like if you don't have like, let's say there's a genre and there's no major female artist in that genre, right? And the biggest male artist is 20 times bigger than the biggest female artist in that space. If you're a smaller female artist starting off, the algorithm has nowhere to recommend you. It's going to recommend you to the fans of that big male artist. And then there's certain men who don't want to blast the music in their car of a woman singing because they're uncomfortable with whatever the fuck it is.
You can't tell me what to do.
The algorithm starts to squash female artists.
So you look at gender too, like even that gender, the gender of the person that's listening.
It doesn't. The algorithm isn't necessarily saying, "Oh, the gender of the person is this or that," but what it is doing is it's saying, all right, I'm going to recommend this song to under the ecosystem of whoever the biggest artist is in this space. And if the biggest artist is a male artist and the next biggest female artist is 20 times smaller, and it recommends it to the male artist, and 60-70% of that male artist's fans are men, it's going to recommend it to those men, and they're going to not finish the song maybe because they're, as I said, they don't like feel comfortable listening to that stuff or whatever stupid thing it is. And it's going to make that song seem like it's not doing as well because people aren't going to like it as much. And so it just starts squashing things, right? And all algorithms are just learning human behavior in certain respects, right? But then there's other crazy things too, where you notice trends where all of a sudden, you can't get YouTube ads to run in a certain market if it's like overly sexualized. And then you're like, oh, wait, like, why is it saying this is overly sexualized? This isn't overly sexualized. Why is it? Is there like a racial element to this? Is there, there's literally so many different things that these computers learn over time, that's based in like just ridiculous, sometimes antiquated stuff. And then sometimes just
wouldn't that be the programmer? Because the AI is learning from the person who programmed it. So it's the programmer's own, I guess.
To some extent, for sure, but also just like that method that I just explained specifically of like the streaming of the male artist and the female artist. Like that's literally just it not knowing, the algorithm not knowing who to recommend it to because there isn't that space. But once you have that top level thing, everything can grow beneath it. When you think about like the more like reggae revival, like kind of movement or whatever, people want to call it different things. And, when the Chronology album came out for Chronix, like at that point in time, he had the show in New York or in Brooklyn at Celebrate Brooklyn. It was a free show. And then the next day there was an article in the New York Times. Rob Kenner, awesome writer, wrote saying like, Chronix is taking over the world, reggae, blah, 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 right? There was this moment where like there was such an excitement over that album release.
Yeah.
Such an excitement, and he was kind of the leader of that space. Yeah. So everybody beneath it had a way better opportunity to get on a tour, to get on in the digital ecosystem, to get recommended things. So it's just a matter of whoever these top line people are, depending on where they are, it creates a whole ecosystem below.
They pull people with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. My other question too is that you talk about not hit driven, which is weird for
Right.
Jamaicans because Jamaicans love hits. And it's one of the topics that
And
we
if you
actually
not hit, you call.
yeah. And it's one of the topics that we're actually going to discuss. Where the new artist, as he mentioned, Valiant, him sang Don't Check, and he had a bunch of other songs, huge. And I guess one fan of his that realized or recognized that his recent song Hall of Fame, it wasn't getting the hits or the views, the same views as
Some of his other songs like 40 Don't Check.
in the same
Same
length
here.
of time or whatever. And I guess they're saying like, people want to talk about the certain content or whatever, but what you're saying though, and I think it's so key because you're saying that stick figures. I'm going to use stick figures because I guess they're your main artist, but stick figure, he does the same songs, the same sound and the same message, and it's this consistency of what he does. Well, we in Jamaica, we like variety and we want to do different things.
I don't think that's the problem.
What do you think?
I think there's two things. I think that our diaspora and our core audience, we're very crab in a barrel. We're negative. The reason we do that first week sale thing so much is because we're like, look at the hype this artist have. We're just waiting for them to fail. Want their first week numbers to come out and want to stick it in everybody's face and say, so you think this artist is hype? Let them know nothing in that first week. See it there? Because I see it all the time.
But is it just us and our culture? Because them do it overseas as well.
They do it, but for us, it's a big thing. And like when you go to even a show in Jamaica and an artist is performing, our attitude is like, impress me. Let me see.
That is true.
We don't go to a show like, oh, I'm a fan of this artist. No matter what they do on the stage, I'm going to enjoy it. No. We go there with our buckle in your hand, waiting for them to do something you don't like.
Oh, you're talking about Sting.
No, I'm just saying generally, our attitude is formed that way.
I agree with that one.
So instead of us having this attitude of, well, I kind of like...
You're going with good intentions.
But no, not the side. It's always adversarial as well. It's like, it's like, are you Gaza or Gully? Why can't I be both? Why can't I like both artists? No, you're not allowed to.
Yeah, pick a side.
Pick one.
Yeah, like they've been always trying to assign a side to us.
And by picking one, you now have to root for the downfall of the other.
Yes.
That does not behoove growth within a genre. It doesn't.
Love is combined when we are together. Like lyrics from my heart will last forever. I would have swear, but no, never expected love.
Got chatting, pussy good, me jealous over everything. Me don't need that from your putty from me skin to skin. Heart race, you a boot up me adrenaline. Treat you like a queen, me a your psycho king. Me take a banana boat if you go foreign. Can't make you left, I'm in a try a thing. Now your bank account they are minus. Plus, when them play money, play the chorus. Dark talent don't work, they don't care. You want bus, you have to pay your bus fare. Cause them want money, DJ want money, radio show and podcast want money.